So, for a film called Multiverse of Madness, I was actually kind of surprised by how unengaging and lackluster this film turned out to be. Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness. So, Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness is a long title and is directed by Sam Raimi. And basically, the film follows Doctor Strange, once again played by Benedict Cumberbatch in this film, as he tries to navigate his way through the multiverse with the help of the McAdams and Wong, but also whilst facing complications with Wanda, once again played by Elizabeth Olsen in the film, who is now the Scarlet Witch. And that's basically what I got from the plot of Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness without going into too much spoilers. And honestly, I really didn't get along with this movie, and I feel like a broken record every single time I talk about something Marvel. I really do, because I don't seem to like them that much recently, with the exception of Spider-Man No Way Home and Loki. I don't really get along with Marvel stuff recently. It's really annoying me. Honestly, I went into this movie yesterday, I went to the movie last night, really wanted to love it, and it's Sam Raimi. Sam Raimi did a great job with the 3 Spider-Man films in the early 2000s, in my opinion. But my god, I really struggle with this movie, and I didn't want to. For a film called Multiverse of Madness, and I said it before, I'm going to say it again, but for a film called Multiverse of Madness, I was surprised by how unengaging it was, and how boring it was to watch. And I hate using that phrase on this channel, but I seem to every single time I do a Marvel film recently, whether it's Eternal, Shang-Chi, Moon Knight. I found that boring to a degree, especially in this last episode, and now here with Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness, I was surprised by how boring I found this film. And I don't want to. I really didn't want to. I really want to love this movie. But I didn't. And it annoyed me that I didn't. Because, oh god. You know, a lot of people have been saying on, like, Twitter and Instagram recently, if you don't like Multiverse of Madness, it's because your expectations were too high. And, you know what? Yeah, it was. Because when you call a film Multiverse of Madness, you expect that it's going to be mad. You expect they're going to go into all these different multiverses, they're going to be using fantastical ways. But it just wasn't. And it kind of felt that for a film called Multiverse of Madness, it just kind of felt like they played everything safe. And that everything came across as lackluster, and like they weren't really taking any big risks. Because like the biggest risk I actually found in this film, well, I'm not going to give it away because it's a bit of a big spoiler actually when you find out who the real villain of the film is. But that's kind of the biggest risk of the film in my opinion. But I wanted the film to take bigger risks. I wanted it to take me into different multiverses and see what it's like in that universe. See what like an alternative version of Doctor Strange is in a different universe that's completely different than the one we've been watching so far. And you do kind of get to see that, but not to the full extent that you should be able to. And I feel that, oh god, so much of this film was just butchered up in the edit. I really do. I'm going to touch on this again a bit later when I talk about spoilery details in regards to this movie. But, there was a report, I think, around Christmas when Spider-Man No Way Home was coming out, or around before when Spider-Man No Way Home was coming out, where basically, a report came out from the Hollywood Reporter, quite a reliable source, a very reliable source, which basically said that these large reshoots were taking place on this film. And then Benedict Cumberbatch actually came out whilst he was doing promotion for No Way Home, and actually said, oh no wait, those reports are true. And then you watch this movie, and you can kind of see that. Honestly, the movie just kind of felt like 2 conflicting visions. You've got Sam Raimi's vision and his directorial style, but then you've also got the MCU's vision and the MCU sort of style, where they kind of play it a bit safe, and it's kind of like, oh, a bit tamed down. We don't want to scare kids too much. That's what it kind of feels like. You've got these 2 big conflicting visions coming together in this movie, and none of it really gels well together. Unlike the Sam Raimi Spider-Man movie with Tobey Maguire from like the early 2000s, his vision perfectly blends into those movies in my opinion, particularly Spider-Man 2, which is one of my all-time favourite comic book movies. I love Spider-Man 2. I think it's absolutely fantastic. I think the train fight in that movie is beyond brilliant. But the thing is, with this movie, when you have those 2 conflicting visions, what you get is just a big mess. And you really get that in the first opening chase scene of the movie. In the opening 20 minutes of the movie, it's just a complete and utter mess. Not unlike this review right now. Honestly, it's a complete and utter mess the opening of this film. It really is. Like, you meet America Chavez, like, okay, who's she? Okay, what's meant to, why? Well, it's America Chavez. Oh, that's fine then. Okay, she's running away with this alternative version of Doctor Strange, which, by the way, isn't a spoiler, it's been revealed in the trailers. Then she's jumped into another universe, and then, okay, in this other universe, she's met this other version of Doctor Strange. The Doctor Strange we all know, we've all seen in the past, like Doctor Strange, Infinity War, Endgame, and so on and so on and so on. We're jumping into that universe now, the universe which we know of the MCU, and now there's this big monster that's chasing America Chavez, and some of the CGI is a bit ropey here, and some of the editing is a bit shocking, to be honest, especially for a Sam Raimi movie, especially for an MCU movie. And it's just kind of like, what's going on? Honestly, some people have been praising the opening of this movie, and if you love the opening of this movie, I'm jealous. I was sat there during the opening going, well, that doesn't make sense. That shot doesn't link up to that one particularly well. The CGI there is pretty ropey, especially for an MCU film. Honestly, the budget for this movie must have been massive, and you don't feel it when you watch the movie, really, though. You don't really feel the budget, and I wanted to. That's not really a huge issue, though, but at the same time, though, the CGI should be better, especially in the opening sequence. I was watching it going, what? Okay, and then there's this wedding taking place. What? It doesn't really make sense. Nothing's really gelling together in the opening, and then that sort of filmmaking continued for the rest of the movie. Nothing was really gelling well together. Everyone was kind of coming together, and nothing was really working, though. And, you know, there's moments of a good film in there. That's the annoying thing. There's moments of a really interesting film in there which deals with the consequences of the multiverse that open up and deals with the consequences of what Doctor Strange did in Infinity War and Endgame. But the thing is, though, this film is so much concerned with, you know, cameos and jangling keys in front of the audience, so people go, oh, look, it's cameos. Oh, this film's brilliant. And at the same time, though, the film is also concerned with all the Scarlet Witch and Wanda sort of stuff, which are the Darkhold and things like that, or the magic sort of stuff going on in the movie. And the film feels like it's more concerned with all the Doctor Strange stuff and all the Wanda, aka Scarlet Witch stuff, than the actual emotion of the movie. Like, there's this great scene in the opening of the film, like in the first 20 minutes of the movie, where basically Doctor Strange is having a conversation with Michael Schubert's character. You know, Michael Schubert from the first Doctor Strange, and he's back here, and then this conversation in the church, and it's this great moment, it's this really emotional moment, but then Michael Schubert gets it in the rest of the film, and it doesn't continue with that storyline. It touches on something which I want the MCU to touch on a bit more. I'm not going to give it away because you haven't seen the film yet, but it touched on something which I really want the MCU to touch on much more going forward, and I don't think it will, by the way, but it touched on something, and I was like, that's brilliant! But then the thing is, like, 2 minutes later, Doctor Strange is in New York, and this big tentacle monster is going to go, what? Why? And by the way, who is living in New York at this point in the MCU? Honestly, the amount of stuff that's gone on in New York in the MCU, who the hell is living there anymore? And in this movie, it's kind of reinforced that idea. Who the hell wants to live in New York when there's big tentacle monsters going about on the streets? Like, imagine going to work and just seeing that and going, oh wait, it's another typical day in the world of the MCU. That's what it kind of feels like. And I just, oh god, sometimes it annoys when some people go, well, the Marvel films are really realistic nowadays. They're very realistic, and the verisimilitude of these films is fantastic. But when you really think about it, they're not linking up together, though. That's what really annoys me. When some people say the Marvel films are so realistic, I'm like, no, they're not. You know, in reality, Doctor Strange would have kind of like 10 million bruises on his head by the end of that fight, the big tentacle monster. So would America Chavez, and so would a Wong. And it's kind of like, what? None of it's really making sense, to be honest, whatsoever. And it's much like Moon Knight, where it feels like they're throwing a lot at the wall of this movie, and some of it is sticking. Some of it is sticking. Some of the film works, and we'll go on to perks a bit later in the review. But much like Moon Knight, it does feel like they're throwing a lot of this wall, and none of it's really sticking. None of it's really, you know, gelling well the film. None of it's really coming across as engaging. Honestly, there's one sequence in particular, which is revealed in the trailers as well, where you see Doctor Strange and America Chavez going on to all these different universes. But it just kind of feels like, you know, somebody said in the writer's room, oh, let's just do that. Let's just have a scene in the film where Doctor Strange and America Chavez go into all these different universes. But it's kind of like, why? I was watching that sequence and go, okay, it's pretty interesting what they're trying to do here. They're introducing different styles of filmmaking as well, which is pretty interesting. I'm going to way there, but it's quite an interesting sequence. But I just kind of left there going, why? Like, I understand what that scene was trying to do, but I just was watching that scene going, why should I care? I don't really, God, it's just another moment which really didn't work for me. It just kind of feels like they're throwing so much to the wall with, you know, Rachel McAdams' character, Christine Palmer, the whole Illuminati stuff, they're throwing that at the wall, the whole of Doctor Strange's story in the movie, the whole Scarlet Witch's story in the movie, the whole of Wong's story in the movie. It just feels like they're throwing so much at the wall, and some of it is sticking, but some of it's not. In fact, the majority of the film, the majority of the plot of the movie is not sticking. And then what you get is this big butchered up mess where things keep happening, and I go, okay, that's happening, that's happening, that's happening, that's happening, that's happening. How does it all fit together? Doesn't really matter. Multiverse. That's what it feels like. It doesn't really matter how does it all fitting together, just multiverse. That's what it feels like. It's like, what? That's not a good reason for all this to fit together. I hope I'm explaining myself well, but I don't even know if I am, because I'm so annoyed that I didn't like this movie. Because another big reason that I didn't like this movie was because it felt like you had to be a big comic book fan, a big fan of the Marvel comics to really understand what was going on in this movie. And that's not good in my opinion. I spoke about this in my Moon Knight review, the comics and the films and the comics. One of my big ones with Moon Knight, with all the Egyptian lore stuff surrounding that character, like, yeah, I understand what they're trying to do, and I understand the Egyptian lore stuff might be key to the Moon Knight character in the comics, but the comics and the films and the films and the comics. So change it up. And I wanted them to do the same with this movie. Honestly, there's so much focus on the Dark Code, and that's not really a big spoiler, by the way, because the Dark Code was touched on, I think, the final episode of WandaVision. I'm going to be honest, I don't remember much from WandaVision, because, ooh, that TV show disappointed me. But yes, you know, the Dark Code, this book of enchantment, I think, wasn't really interested in what was going on with that, because, to be honest, I found the film quite engaging. But this Dark Code, but this book called the Dark Code, which has got, like, full of magical spells, which, you know, anyway, you get the Dark Code, right, is key to the narrative of this film. But the thing is, though, I didn't really get what the Dark Code was. I understand that they kind of introduced it at the end of WandaVision. I understand that it plays a big role here. But what does it really do? I just never really found that interesting. I'm sure they explained it in one of the many exposition scenes in this movie. But I really didn't feel interested or compelled into what was going on with the Dark Code and all the magic sort of spells from this movie. I really didn't get along with that. And so much of this movie feels like it was made for die-hard Marvel Comics fans. The thing is, though, I'm not a die-hard Marvel comic book fan. And to be honest, the majority of the audiences who watch this movie won't be. And there's just decisions in this movie which I'm going to be wondering how non-Marvel comic book fans take them. Because will they fully understand them? I didn't fully understand them. That's what I'm trying to say. I didn't fully understand them. And I wonder what others will make of those decisions, because, like, oh god, it's all the magic stuff. It just feels like stuff you had to know from the Marvel comics to really understand this movie. And the post-credit scene as well, not gets away here, but the first post-credit scene of this movie feels like you have to be a Marvel comic book fan to understand what's going on there. But not only the post-credit scene, but all the stuff to do with Wanda and the Scarlet Witch, and also to the Illuminati. We're meant to sit there and go, oh, it's the Illuminati. Great. Why am I meant to care? I don't understand. And it feels like if I'm a Marvel Comics reader, and I'm not, by the way, I should say, I've never, ever, ever read a comic book in my life, and I never intended to, be honest. It's just not my sort of thing. But the thing is, though, you know, I was kind of sitting there on the Illuminati going, okay, am I meant to know who these guys are? Am I really meant to know who these people are? What? What's going on with Scarlet Witch? Am I meant to know what the Dark Code is? Am I meant to know what she's really doing? And I was just kind of like, and why? Why? Why have they made this film to appeal to die-hard Marvel Comics fans? And I don't really get that. And I'm going to touch on that again a bit later in the review. But yeah, it kind of felt like you had to be a comic book fan to understand what's going on in this movie. But I'm not. And a lot of this movie just kind of flew over my head. I was like, okay, that must be something about Marvel Comics, but I don't get that. I've got to admit that. That's what it kind of felt like for me when I was watching this movie. And also, this movie relies a lot on fan service, which I'll get onto a bit later in this review, which is kind of like, you know, which is kind of like with the cameos, where they're jangling keys in front of the Marvel fans' faces and go, oh look what we're trying to do was good movie, cameos. That's what it kind of feels like when you're watching it. And also, just so much of the film feels messy, and like it's not coming together in any sort of way, and that really annoyed me. Like, you do have elements of Sam Raimi's direction in this movie, because obviously Sam Raimi did the Evil Dead films, and you have elements of his horror direction in this movie. But it's not that groundbreaking. Like, I was reading some reviews of the film and saying, oh my god, this is clearly a Sam Raimi film. It really leans to the horror. It's an actual scary movie. And I was watching the film last night going, I don't find it scary. It's not leaning into the horror as much as some people making out. Like, they lean into the horror aspect, and it is probably the scariest MCU film today. But that's not saying much. You know, it's the scariest MCU film today, but that's also like saying, you know, Revenge of the Sith is the best of the Star Wars prequels. It's not particularly brilliant still, though, and it's not particularly groundbreaking, the fact that Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness is leading into the horror a bit more. You know, it's kind of like, oh, okay, I understand what they're trying to do. You know, Shang-Chi is leaning into the wuxia genre a bit more. It's leaning into the martial arts genre a bit more. But it still feels predominantly like an MCU film. And this film does as well. Even so, yes, it leans into horror elements a bit more. It's still predominantly an MCU film. And I feel some people were overhyping that. I mean, it's not unheard of for Marvel fans to overhype a new Marvel project. That's not unheard of. But that's what it kind of feels like. And I never found it scary either. And I'm not really a fan of horror movies, I've got to admit. Although, there are some horror movies which I absolutely adore. I'm not really a fan of horror as a genre as a whole. The thing is, though, I can still enjoy a horror movie and still feel scared by horror movies. I still feel a bit unnerved by horror films. The thing is, though, with the movie, I just didn't really feel unnerved or scared. I didn't really find it scary whatsoever. There's a couple of jump scares, but again, they didn't make me, you know, jump out of my seat or anything like that. I wasn't really scared by them. None of the horror in this film really worked for me. And also, on the topic of Sam Raimi, let's talk about the Danny Elfman musical score. Now, I think Danny Elfman is a wonderful composer. I think he did a great job with the Spider-Man films he composed, Spider-Man 1 and 2, and I also think he does a great job with the Tim Burton films he composes for. But the thing is, though, I really didn't get along with his score in this movie. I know a lot of people have been praising his score, but I really didn't get along with it because it just kind of reinforced one of my big problems with Marvel's scores as a whole. Like, there's not many uses of, you know, Michael Giacchino's Doctor Strange theme in the film, you know, dum da 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 dum dum bum 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 ba da dum bum bum. There's not many uses of that theme, of that motive in the film. There's like one or two uses, but for the most part, Danny Elfman has come up with his own new themes for Doctor Strange and Wanda, which is fine. But the thing is, though, it's inconsistent with the music of the MCU, and that starts to annoy me with their scores. Like, as good as their scores can be, and I love the score for the first Doctor Strange movie. I'm not a huge fan of the movie as a whole, but I love Michael Giacchino's score for that film. I think it's fantastic. But the thing is, though, you know, yes, some of the themes are carried over into this movie, but not nearly as much as he wanted to be. And actually, you know, Doctor Strange's themes comes lacking by the end of this movie, and that kind of annoyed me. Because I'm a big film music fan, and I'm a big fan of Michael Giacchino. I think he did a great job with the musical score for Doctor Strange, and I also think he did a great job with carrying over Doctor Strange's theme into the musical score for Spider-Man No Way Home. But here, Doctor Strange's theme kind of feels absent for the majority of the film. It's in there a little bit in the first opening 20 minutes, but to be honest, it's absent from most of the film, and it's kind of like, why? Like, Danny Elfman's score is fine for the movie. I'm not by any means saying it's bad, but it sounds very much like his Men in Black scores. And I should say, I'm not a huge fan of his Men in Black scores, but, like, there's no distinctive themes in this film is what I'm trying to say. There's no themes which stood out to me. I'm like, oh god, this is a new, exciting theme for Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness. You know, regardless of whether I think the film is good, I can still like the soundtrack for a movie. Hence, you know, the first Doctor Strange. I don't think the first Doctor Strange is a particularly memorable movie, but I love the score for that film. But here, the score, oh god, it's just kind of cemented my opinion on the film as a whole. I really didn't get along with it. And I don't want to criticise the score too much, because I know how much effort can go into making a musical score for a film. I know how much effort goes into doing a musical score for any movie. But here, oh god, I do kind of wish it was a bit better. There's a couple of moments when it sounds good. There's a couple of moments. There's one moment where you see Wanda using her power and navigating away from the multiverse, and the score works really well there. But other than that, I can't really think of many instances in the film where I thought, oh, the score's good here, because it just wasn't. It was a lot of just, you know, the generic sort of action score, but it kind of done in a bit of a Danny Elfman style. There was no distinctive theme. Unlike his score for Tim Burton's Batman movies, unlike his score for the Sam Raimi Spider-Man movies, there's no theme in this movie which I think is going to be remembered in like 10, 20 or 30 years time. And I think that's a bit of a shame, to be honest, overall. Anyway, let's talk about the perks of the film. Let's talk about the things in the film that I actually kind of liked. I think all the performances are great. I do think all the actors in the film are trying their best with the parts they've been given. I think Benedict Cumberbatch is great as Doctor Strange. I don't think it's his best role. I think his best role is either Sherlock or the performance he did in The Power of the Dog. I thought he was brilliant in that movie. But here he is good as well. And also, you know, Elizabeth Olsen is brilliant as the Scarlet Witch, as Wanda, aka Scarlet Witch. She's great in this movie. But I did see a funny tweet on Twitter where somebody put, oh, you know, Elizabeth Olsen in Doctor Strange, The Multiverse of Madness is giving Meryl Streep a run for her money. And like, yeah. By the way, how many Meryl Streep movies have you actually watched? I wanted to say that to the person who tweeted that. How many Meryl Streep movies have you actually watched? But yeah, Elizabeth Olsen is great in the movie, but she's by no means Oscar-worthy in her performance. I thought she was great in the movie. I thought she was the best performance in this film as a whole. but I still didn't think it was Oscar worthy. And I think some people again were overhyping that, saying because it's Marvel. But anyway, yes. Also, some other performances are great as well. Like Benedict Wong is great as Wong. There's a lot of comic relief with his character there, which I can see working for a lot of people. Didn't really work for me. Which on the topic of that, I wasn't a big fan of the comedy movie. But heck, newsflash, water wet there. I'm not really a fan of comedy in Marvel movies in general, with the exception of a couple of instances like Guardians of the Galaxy and the Tom Holland Spider-Man movies. I'm not really a fan of comedy in Marvel movies in general. But here, I can see where some of Wong's comic relief would work for some people. Didn't work for me, but I can see what they're trying to do there, and I kind of admired that. Still didn't work for me, but wasn't a big issue as a whole. And also, I think Rachel McAdams is great as Christine Palmer. I think that's her character's name. I'm gonna be honest, I can't remember that much. And she's giving more to in this movie than she was in the first Doctor Strange. And I like what they did with that character. I didn't love it. I like what they did with that character. But again, I didn't find it really that interesting. I just thought it was kind of different than what they do with most love interests in the MCU. But I thought that worked fine. I thought it was fine in the film. And also, I think that the one who plays America Chavez is great. I think America Chavez is a great new addition to the MCU. Now, I do have a few problems with the way they leave their character in this film, but I won't get onto that just yet. But I do think America Chavez worked great in the movie, and I think the one who played it brings a lot of energy to the role. And also, I think the film has some nice cinematography in there, some nice cinematography, not a lot of nice cinematography, but some nice cinematography, and also, it's made well, and clearly a lot of people put effort into this film, and that's great. I really wish I loved it, but I've got to be honest, I didn't, and oh god, it annoyed me that I didn't. It really did. And let's talk about spoilers a sec. Spoiler here, if you've managed to avoid any spoiler from the movie on any social media platform, congratulations, but I will be getting some big spoiler details in this review from now on. So anyway, let's talk about the Illuminati and the cameos. I'm going to be honest, the cameos weren't that, surprising. Because, for the most part that we were in the trailers, Patrick Stewart as Charles Xavier, aka Professor X, was revealed in the official trailer for this movie. Also, some of the other cameos weren't that much of a surprise, because, they all showed up at the red carpet of the movie, which is fine. The thing is, though, I do kind of feel that they should have said to those actors, maybe not Patrick Stewart, because it wasn't one of the official trailers of the film, but I do feel they should have said to some of the other actors, maybe don't come to the premiere, because it might reveal something. But anyway, they showed up at the premiere nonetheless, and, Hayley Atwell was great as Captain Carter. I kind of liked that whole idea. I haven't seen What If, but I liked her in this movie. And also, I kind of like the new Monica Rambeau. I kind of like the alternative version of Captain Marvel that we see in this movie. I thought that was done well. And then this whole thing to do with Black Bolt, I think his name is. I might be wrong there, but I didn't have a clue what that was. Which again, kind of reinforces what I was saying about having to be a die-hard comic book fan to understand that. And I'm kind of like, why though? Why are you appealing to that demographic when that's only even a quarter of your demographic for the people who actually watch this movie? Marvel movies are billion-dollar films. I do feel people who watch Black Bolt in this movie as a part of the Illuminati are going to go, who the hell's that? I did. I did. I didn't have a clue who that was. I kind of got an idea it was an Inhuman. Great. Who the hell are they? But anyway, yes. Let me go on to, Patrick Stewart as Charles Xavier, aka Professor X. Although he's not the same Professor X from the X-Men movies, which was a bit disappointing. Honestly, it kind of reminded me of Evan Peters in WandaVision. Evan Peters in WandaVision, he shows up in that show, and you think he's a Quicksilver from the X-Men films. You think he's a Quicksilver from, X-Men Days of Future Past, X-Men Apocalypse, and X-Men Dark Phoenix. However, he turns out to be Ralph Bohner. Oh, what a brilliant piece of writing. Not. But anyway, yes, he turns out to be Ralph Bohner. It's kind of like, oh, we thought we were doing one thing, but actually, no. But anyway, yeah, it kind of felt the same way in this movie. It felt in the trailers like they were leading us to believe he was going to be Professor X from the X-Men movies, but actually it just turns out to be Professor X from the X-Men cartoon TV show from the 90s. Kind of like, what? Why? Why not just cast a different actor then? Why does it have to be Patrick Stewart playing that character then? Why does it have to be Patrick Stewart playing that version of Professor X from the 90s X-Men TV show, from the 90s animated X-Men TV show, from what I've heard? I'm kind of like, why did they do that? Cast a different actor if you're going to do that. Make that a bit more subversive. If you're going to go that angle with it, do it better. Cast a completely different actor. Make it more subversive and, kind of unexpected. But they didn't. I was kind of like, oh, why have they done that? I didn't think it was particularly good the way they did Professor X. Although I did like seeing Patrick Stewart back, but I don't know. I kind of felt that whole sequence when we kind of see him using his mind, kind of get into Wanda's mind in the movie, where he's all kind of like white and things like that, and he sees the rubble on the door and things like that. If you've seen the movie, you know what I'm talking about. But yeah, I kind of felt that whole sequence where we see, you know, Professor X using his mind to get into Wanda's mind was fine, but just kind of came out of nowhere. And then we get on to the big surprise cameo in this movie, which is John Krasinski as Mr. Fantastic, aka Reed Richards. And I think John Krasinski is great. I love him in The Office as Jim, and it also the Quiet Place movies he directed, and I can't wait to see what he does next. I think he's a great actor and a great director. But the thing is though, as much as I kind of liked him in this movie, he wasn't really there. Like, I've got to be honest, I've only seen the movie once, but it was so blaringly obvious to me that he wasn't really there actually in the scene. Like, they just shot his part on some other set in some other country. That's what it kind of felt like when I was watching the film last night. Honestly, I was watching this and I was like, oh, John Krasinski's there. Oh no, wait, it's not John Krasinski, it's John Krasinski's floating head. That's what it felt like. That's what it looked like. And I was like, why are you doing that? Just don't have John Krasinski in it. If you're going to do that, have someone else. There's plenty of other Marvel actors, past Marvel actors, or future Marvel actors you might have in mind, which could have filled that gap. And I love John Krasinski. I do. I think it's great. And I want to see him as Fantastic. I think that's great casting. But in this movie, it did feel like they were jangling keys with, you know, John Krasinski and Miss Fantastic. So fans would go, whoa, Cameo, great movie. That's what it kind of feels like. And it's like, why are you doing that though? And why does it have to be John Krasinski? Why couldn't that be anyone else? I don't know, an Iron Man variant. I'm not saying Tom Cruise. I'm not saying that. I'm saying it could have been an Iron Man variant. It could have been a Winter Soldier variant. It could have been a Falcon variant. Or it could be a different version of Miss Fantastic. It could be one from the Fantastic Four from like the early 2000s. I don't know. Spice it up a bit. Do something really unexpected if you're going to go that direction. But just having John Krasinski there as Mr. Fantastic, or should I say floating head John Krasinski as Mr. Fantastic, didn't really work. I was kind of like, why are you doing that? I don't know. That just, yeah, because he wasn't really there, because that's kind of obvious to me, that didn't really work for me as a cameo, and I love John Krasinski. I want to see him as Fantastic. I really do. I want him to direct the Fantastic Four film, which was coming whenever, in 2024 probably. I want him to direct the MCU's Fantastic Four film. But the thing is though, that camera didn't work for me because it didn't actually look like it was really there. It just looked like his head had been CGI'd onto a Fantastic Four costume. I was kind of like, what are you doing there? Why? Just use a different actor if you can't get John Krasinski. And they got John Krasinski to appeal to the fans. Hence, that they're moving more into fan service. They know the cameos worked in Spider-Man No Way Home, so they're focusing more on fan service now. And it's just kind of like, why are you doing that though? Because like, there was a report, like I talked about before, which was going around Christmas, which was saying that major reshoots were taking place in Doctor Strange. And at the time, the reports were saying it was to add more cameos. So I was thinking, oh, it's going to be like a sequel to the film, where they go into different universes, do different cameos, like, I don't know, Michael Fassbender's, Magneto, or some of the Fantastic Four from the early 2000s, or something like that. I don't know, I'm just spitballing ideas, but get the point I'm trying to make. And, I wasn't expecting that in the movie, but the film was called Multiverse of Madness, so that actually would have made a bit more sense. But nevertheless, get the point I'm trying to make. I thought that they added a bunch more cameos into this movie, but actually, it just kind of makes me feel that, okay, if that was a reshoot to add John Krasinski into the movie, why are you doing that? Why are you doing that? And also, I don't feel that was a reshoot, though. I actually feel a reshoot because the movie was just messy, and that the reshoots in general, these reshoots they did before Christmas for this movie, kind of made the film feel messier and just less incoherent. The reshoot thing is a bit of a paradox to me. So they did reshoots to add more cameos. So you're saying they didn't have the Illuminati in before? Because I think they did. But was it to add John Krasinski? Why are you going into fan service more? Or was it just to make the film more coherent? Because actually, you made the film more incoherent in adding more big reshoots, which were a bit obvious to me, I'm not going to lie. But anyway, going on to other spoilery details in the movie. I'm going to try and get through these bits quickly because I've already been rambling on too much in the review. I don't really want it to be a big long review, but heck, it's been long already. But yes, I like what they do with Evil Strange in the film. I like how in the trailers for the film, they made Evil Strange look like the main villain of the film, but actually it turned out to be Wanda. And I like that idea. And also, I like how Evil Strange kind of became a good guy in the end and he helped defeat Wanda. I thought that was a good decision in the film. And also, by the way, Wanda is not dead. If she is dead, by the way, that is one of the most anticlimactic deaths I've ever seen in cinematic history. But she's also not dead, because here's the big problem with this film. America Chavez is sticking around after this film, which means the multiverse is still a concept. And we know that Kang, he was in Loki, he was at the end of Loki, and the end of Loki Season 1 is going to be in Ant-Man and the Wasp 3, coming in February. And so we know that film is going to tap into the multiverse a little bit, which is another point, by the way. I'll get into that a bit later. But who the hell's opened the multiverse? It's still not an answered question yet, but anyway, yeah. Sticking on what I'm saying. You know, the problem with them keeping the multiverse around is, you know, every movie from now on can be either Spider-Man No Home or Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness. And what I mean by that is every movie has endless possibilities, and now every single Marvel movie which comes out, whether it's, you know, anyone which is coming out over the next couple of years, is going to have so much fan speculation, like, they could jump into the multiverse. Like, this could be the movie we have, like, Hugh Jackman in there, or, you know, Professor X, or Magneto, or one of the old Fantastic Four members, or something like that. You get the point I'm trying to make. There's going to be so much fan speculation going to every Marvel movie now, because the multiverse is still a concept in the MCU, and I don't think that's a good decision, because now every movie can be Spider-Man No Home with Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness with all that fan speculation. It's kind of like, why? Just get away from that. And also, the problem with the multiverse is that no character is truly dead. Like, before this film, you know, the MCU was already the Marvel Death universe. You know, Loki died about 5 times, he already had a TV show made about him as well. You know, Loki died 5 times, and there was a TV show made about him after he died 5 times, because he's back in the Loki TV show. And so it was already the Marvel Death universe. But now it's more than ever the Marvel Death universe, because if a character dies in one reality, they can just come back in another reality. Like, if Wanda dies in this reality, in the main reality of the MCU, Doctor Strange could go on another reality and go, hey, Wanda, come into this reality and be our new Wanda here. That's what they're going to do. It ruins the sort of, you know, stakes of any Marvel movie from now on. It ruins any stakes of Marvel movies when the multiverse is still around. Because now every single movie can have a ton of fan speculation, and that's including films like Thor and Thunder, and that's including Guardians of the Galaxy 3, because I can bet you those movies, I'm not saying they're going to touch on it loads, but I can bet you those movies are going to touch on multiverse just a little bit. I wouldn't be surprised, to be honest. And I feel that's another bad decision, just touching the multiverse too much. Like, just stop doing that. You don't need to touch the multiverse so much. It's just, oh god, it opens possibilities which it shouldn't be doing for future Marvel films. And I don't know. I don't think keeping the multiverse around in the MCU is a particularly good idea. But anyway, that's just kind of my big problem with Doctor Strange: The Multiverse of Madness. But if you enjoy this movie, that is great. I really didn't get along with it. The action felt weirdly paced, in my opinion. The film felt rather engaging, and it really didn't work for me. And I don't know. I feel that keeping the multiverse around was a bad idea, because we still don't know who actually opened the multiverse. According to this movie, Doctor Strange did. According to the movie, actually, McAdams did. And then according to Loki, though, according to the Loki TV show, Loki did. According to WandaVision, Wanda did. Who actually opened up the multiverse? That shouldn't be a question I'm still asking, but it is at the end of this film. And I just kind of like, why are you keeping that question going on? And I don't enjoy talking shit about Marvel movies. I don't enjoy shitting on Marvel movies. It says in my Moon Knight review, I don't enjoy shitting on Marvel movies and complaining about them, but I keep doing that because these movies keep not working for me. They're not working for me recently so much. I like Spider-Man No Home. Even that movie I had big problems with. Loki I enjoyed as well, but even that TV show I had big problems with. It just, oh god, Marvel recently. Yeah. I didn't plan to do a big rant in this review, but I seem to have. And this video's gone on much longer than I already intended, so I'm going to wrap up my thoughts here by saying that Doctor Strange and Multiverse of Madness was a rather unengaging film for me, which really didn't work for the most part. It's got some really good emotional moments in there, and there's a testament to the actors, because they actually make the emotional moments work. There's a great emotional moment towards the end of the film, where Doctor Strange says to Christian Palm, you know, Rachel McAdams' character, he says, I loved you in every universe. That's a really good moment, but it just comes out of nowhere. It's like, why are you doing that? All these emotional moments in the film just come out of nowhere, and so much of the film just feels messy and incoherent, and like they don't even know what they're doing. And I think that keeping multiverse around after this movie is a bad idea. And the cameos just kind of felt like Marvel was jangling, you know, shiny keys in front of his Marvel fans to go, cameos, look, ooh, look, here we are, the movie's great. God, I just don't really like stuff like that. And like I said before, for a film called Multiverse of Madness, I was surprised by how bored I found myself whilst watching this film. And so, all in all, I'm going to say that Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness, I'm going to say it's a 4 out of 10. Honestly, I've given it a low rating there because there were some parts of the film I enjoyed, which is why I've given it a 4. But at the same time, though, for the most part, the film just didn't work for me. But if it worked for you, That is fucking fantastic. That's amazing. I love it when someone loves a film more than I do. But I've just got to admit, for me, this film just, oh god, it really didn't work. And I'm frustrated it didn't work for me. I'm frustrated that Moon Knight didn't work for me because I just recently reviewed that. So that's what I'm talking about again a bit more in this review. But I'm frustrated that Moon Knight didn't work for me. And I'm frustrated that this film didn't work for me either. And I really wish it did. And by the way, don't be one of those Marvel fans. If you enjoy this movie, that's great. I'm not saying you shouldn't enjoy this movie. I love it when people enjoy a movie more than I do. But the thing is, though, you know, don't be one of those people online who goes, well, this person didn't enjoy this movie because... No. Don't be one of those people who makes excuses for why somebody didn't enjoy a movie or why somebody liked a movie. It's all subjective. And, you know, yes, my expectations were high going this movie because it's called Multiverse of Madness, and Kevin Feige, you know, the head of Marvel Studios, was promising so much of this film, and then when it didn't deliver, it just kind of like, oh, so it wasn't that mad after all. It was just kind of like, okay, that's fine, let's just move on there. I don't know. Overall, the film didn't work for me, but if it works for you, that's great. I found it rather unengaging and rather boring, and by the end of the movie, I don't know, I couldn't care about anything anymore, and it kind of made me feel the same way that Eternals did after I watched that as well. At the end of Eternals, kind of like, whoo, thank God that film's over. And that's also how I felt with this movie, and I really didn't want to. I think all the performances are great. I do think that Sam Raimi has direction in this movie, but in doing so, the film feels like it has conflicting visions overall in terms of direction. It doesn't really know what it wants to be, and a lot of it feels like it's been butchered up in the edit with, you know, big reshoots, and the cameos were fine, some of them were good, some of them not so much. And you know, you had a certain cameo as well, which I'm not going to go into spoiler detail again. I would have talked about in spoiler, but you had a certain cameo which was just a floating head. But yeah, overall, the film is just, yeah, it's not that good in my opinion, and it was a real big disappointment. It really was, because Sam Raimi did such a good job with the Spider-Man films that with Tobey Maguire. But here, I don't know, it just, yeah, it really didn't work for me. And I'm really annoyed that it didn't. And, like I said before, and I'm going to say it again here, because it really irritates my opinion on the film as a whole, but for a film called Multiverse of Madness, I was surprised by how boring, tedious, and lackluster I found this film as a whole. And so, all in all, I'm going to say that Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness, I'm going to say that it's a 4 out of 10 from me. Anyway guys, what do you think of Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness? Please do comment down below and know your thoughts in the comment section below. Anyway guys, I should say, over the next week or so, I won't be uploading as much because I've got essay deadlines now, so I just wanted to say that. But I will be back to uploading as much as possible in the near distant future, just after I get my essays in. Anyway guys, thank you as always for watching, and if you haven't yet, please do click down below and subscribe on this video, and look forward to many more, both film and TVs, come very soon on this channel. See you guys again soon, bye bye for now, bye!